In Shvi of Parshat Bereishit, in the seventh Aliyah, we come, if you will, to a moment of crisis. And the moment of crisis is after all the failings and fallings of human beings, starting in Gan Eden, starting with the eating from the tree that they were forbidden to eat from, continuing with Cain's murder of his brother Hevel, and into the time when the Bnei Hu Elohim, the simple meaning of Bnei Hu Elohim means powerful people, simply took anyone they want, any woman they wanted, and the world was spinning out of a moral compass. The God and Pasuk Vav, Perek Vav, Vayinachem Hashem ki asa et adam ba'aretz. Man regrets, God regrets that he made man. Vayitatsev el libo. Vayitatsev, God is pained, God is in sorrow, God experiences that which he had, if you will, cursed man with as a result of man and woman's sin. 3 times we find in the curse to man and to woman the term etzev, pain and sorrow in giving birth, pain and sorrow in gaining one's daily bread, and now God himself, Vayitatzpev el libo, to his, God's heart, as it were. And this pasuk is preceded, Vayar Hashem ki rabah ra'at ha'adam ba'aretz. God saw that the evil of man in the world is great. And v'chol yetzer machshevo libo, and every imagination of the thoughts of his heart, rak ra kol hayom, was but evil all the time, all the day. And we know what is to come. What is to come is the flood, is to come the destruction of the human race, except for Noach and his family. And then in Shvi of Parshat, rather in Parshat Noach, not Shvi, I'm sorry, in Revi, we find that Noach makes a mizbeach to God, an altar, and Vayorach Hashem et reach hanichoach, that God smells the incense smell, whatever that means. Vayomer Hashem el libo, God is once again saying el libo. What? Lo osif lekalel odet hadama ba'avur hadam. I will no longer curse the world because of man. Why? Ki yetzer leiv hadam ra minurav. For the inclination, the yetzer, the desire, the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. What has changed? God destroyed the world because man has this yetzer, which is rak ra, is only evil, and the arc of the human condition bends according to that. The arc of the human condition bends towards evil, rak kol hayom. And now God says, well, I will no longer continue to do this, because yetzer leva adam ra minu rav. Yes, the same thing. What has changed? And here I just want to comment on the Rashi. Rashi says on that pasuk of ra minu rav in Shvi of in Revi, I'm sorry, I mixed up in Revi of Noach. He says that the Minurav, I'm reading Rashi. Rashi says Minurav Ktiv. It is written Minurav. Mishenina latzeit mimei imo nitan bo yetzer hara. From the time that man is ninar, is stirred up to be born, to come forth from his mother's womb, from that moment, the Yetzer Hara comes to man. Natan bo Yetzer Hara. And Yetzer Tov comes only later. Of course, what Rashi is doing here is, and here you will see it. Rashi is commenting, you'll see the Vav is circled. Ni'urav, when the number one, when the Vav is circled, in other words, when we have the word written in that way, it is only read as Ni'urav. However, in form number two, Ni'ayin, the Vav is no longer there. And then the Vav can be read as either Ni'urav or it can be read as Ni'arav. Now, that is called the use of the full plena of written of the word in Hebrew, and then it's certainly Nurav, or written without the Vav. It could be read as Min'arav, and the verb Nun Ayin Resh, No'ar, means to stir up. And perhaps, of course, that's why young people are called, because they're easily stirred up, because they are more active, if you will. Anar is because of movement, right? But Rashi takes this one step back further and says that actually what God is saying is, Yetzer Leiv Ha'adam Ra, from the time, not that he is born, but from the time that he is stirred up, when labor begins, when birth pangs set in. What does this mean? So what has changed? In Parshat, in Bereishit, in Shri, God says of man that his Yetzer Libo rak ra kol hayom, right? So what difference does it make now? So as it were, I believe that this is what Rashi is saying. Let us think about the condition of the fetus in the mother's womb. Perfect life, temperature controlled, food floating all the time, wonderful. And if the fetus is uncomfortable, it gives a kick. And it doesn't care that it's kicking its mother. It's concerned, as it were, with its own comfort. And it doesn't care that for its own comfort, his mother may experience nausea and vomiting and great difficulties, right? Everything is perfect as far as the fetus is concerned. And then something begins to happen. And what begins to happen? Ta-dum! Labor. And as much as the mother is experiencing pain, suddenly, for the first time in its life, the embryo, this infant about to be born, it can't protest. Nothing happens. It is experiencing the labor of the mother. And this is quite upsetting, because this is not the way things are supposed to be in the womb. And what then happens? It's born. It's born, and it comes into a world not of temperature control and so on and so forth. It's very unpleasant. So what does the child do? That which infants do for a long, long time. It begins to scream, and it gets upset. Children are born with their fist closed, right? They're angry, okay? They're angry. This is not the way it's supposed to be. And they're crying and screaming. And they will continue to be that way. We are born as self-centered realities. We are born All infants and people who remain infantile are essentially narcissists. They are the center of the universe. They say, Bishvili nivra ha'olam, and therefore the world is treating me badly and I am angry. And I will wake my parents and I cry and scream whenever I feel uncomfortable. They are takers. They are not givers. Human life. That's the way we are as human animals. Can we become humane animals? That's the challenge of life, and that is not easy, and we don't always succeed. To be humane is to be concerned with the others, to become givers rather than takers. And this is what we have. We have man as the taker in the garden. We have Cain as the jealous and the taker of life. And we have the strong, powerful people taking of those that they want of the daughters of man. And God says, Yetzer libo rak kol hayom. Yes, that's true. But what as it were? Remember, as it were. The imagery now that God stresses is, it might take time for men to grow up. It might take time. They are born that way. And the challenge now is whether someone born that way can become different. Whether man can shape himself, whether parents can raise children who will be givers rather than takers. No simple matter for man on his own. No simple matter for parents as parents. This is the challenge, whether or not we can become givers rather than takers, whether or not someone can be born who will run against the grain of his nature, perhaps run against the grain of the society in which he finds himself, and will learn to be a giver. What in Hebrew we call a person of chesed. And we will meet this person in the person of Avram, who appears in Shvi of Parshat Noach. Chesed la'Avram. Avram is the model of chesed. Avram and the Avot are the models of chesed, of givers. And here one should certainly study the introduction of the Netziv to Sefer Bereishit of Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, the Rosh Hashiva of Volozhin for many, many decades. And his commentary, Hamek Dover on Chumash, he has a beautiful introduction to Bereishit, and it portrays the Avot, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, as being men of concern for the other, of givers rather than takers. So, Shvi of Bereishit introduces us to the problem of man only as the taker, only as the center of the universe, only as one who says, I, as the child screams, I. And finally in Shvi of Parshas Noach, we'll meet somebody who says not just I, but says thou, you, who knows how to give and not only to take. HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give us the wisdom to understand the Shvi of Bereishis and the tragedy it foretells, and to understand Shvi of Parshas Noach and the blessing it foreshadows.